Your motorcycle engine isn't dying because of old age or high mileage. It's being killed by habits you barely even notice. The real threat? Everyday actions like cold starts can cause up to 90% of an engine's wear right when you fire up the bike. Sludge builds silently, parts grind against each other, and each bad habit adds up to thousands in damage long before engines ever seize or fail. So if you want your engine to last, you have to stop killing it, one ride at a time. What are these hidden killers? And which one are you guilty of? Let's pull back the engine cover and expose the truth. 1. Stop taking cold starts and short trips for granted. Every time you hit the starter on a cold engine, you're waking up a masterpiece that's at its most vulnerable. The oil sitting in your crankcase thickens overnight, clinging to the bottom like syrup. When you fire up the bike, that oil takes precious seconds to reach the top end, leaving pistons, bearings, and cam lobes running almost dry. In fact, research shows up to 90% of total engine wear happens in the first minute after a cold start. That's not a small number. It's the difference between a bike that purrs for decades and one that sounds tired before its time. Short rides make it even worse. If you're just running to the corner store or commuting a few miles at a time, your engine never gets hot enough to burn off moisture and fuel vapors that sneak past the rings. Instead, water and unburned gas collect inside, mixing with oil to form acidic sludge. Think of it as cholesterol for your engine. That sludge doesn't just sit quietly. It clogs oil passages, starves moving parts, and eats away at bearings and seals. Mechanics call this the silent killer. Pop open a neglected motor, and you'll find thick, black paste coating everything. A sure sign of too many short trips and not enough full heat cycles. The engine is built to run hot, not just warm. It needs that heat to expand metal parts to their proper fit, thin out the oil so it can flow, and drive away the chemical soup that builds up when you shut it down too soon. One rider, religious about short commutes but never long rides, watched his oil pressure warning light flicker. After just 12,000 miles, inside, his mechanic found sludge caking the oil pickup and pitting on the crank journals, damage that can cost thousands to repair. The fix? Let your engine idle for about 60 seconds after a cold start, then ride gently until it's fully warm. And if your routine is all short hops, make it a point to take your bike on a longer trip, at least 20 or 30 minutes at operating temperature, every week or two. That's how you keep the oil clean, the parts protected, and the engine happy for the long haul. 2. Stop abusing your RPMs. There's a myth that babying your engine at low revs is always better. But the truth is, both extremes, lugging too low or redlining too high, can quietly wreck your bike from the inside out. Let's break down why. Lugging happens when you're riding at a low speed in a high gear, forcing the engine to work hard without enough RPMs. It feels gentle, but inside you're creating brutal pressure in the combustion chamber, what mechanics call high brake mean effective pressure, or BMEP. That pressure hammers your crankshaft and main bearings, and it's a perfect recipe for detonation, where the fuel-air mix explodes unevenly. Over time, those shock waves pit your pistons, wear out the bearings, and can even crack the ringlands, those thin bands of metal between piston rings. One rider, convinced low RPMs meant long life, ignored the grumbling and vibrations in sixth gear. At the next oil change, his mechanic found glittering metal in the oil and a top ring land that had started to fail. The fix? Downshift early. Keep your RPMs in the power band, where the engine feels smooth and pulls cleanly. If your bike's shuddering or making that deep, unhappy rumble, you're lugging it. Rule of thumb: it's better to run a gear lower than a gear too high. On the other end, there's the temptation to chase redline every chance you get. Briefly brushing against the limiter won't ruin a healthy engine, but living at max RPM is a different story. At high revs, your valves, springs, and timing chain are moving at breakneck speed, Push too far and the springs can't snap the valves shut fast enough. This is valve float. When that happens, the valves might hang open just as the piston comes up. And that's when the real carnage starts. Bent valves, cracked pistons, even a destroyed cylinder head. Mechanics have pulled apart engines with clear signs of float, valve heads dented, keepers broken, and faint impact marks on piston crowns, all from chasing the red line on every ride. The solution? Use your RPMS wisely. Enjoy the top end when you need it, but don't live there. Engines are happiest in their sweet spot. Revved enough to breathe, but not so high they're screaming for mercy. Bottom line, whether you're lugging or redlining, both habits hammer your engine in ways you can't see until it's too late. Keep your RPMS in the zone, shift when the bike tells you, and your engine will thank you with miles of smooth, strong running. 3. Quit abusing your clutch and drivetrain. Hard launches, clutch popping, and holding the lever in at every red light might feel like you're shaving a second off your commute, but they're quietly draining your wallet and contaminating your oil. Here's what happens behind the scenes. When you dump the clutch for a quick launch, the friction plates slam together under maximum load. That shockwave travels down the chain, stretches it link by link, and hammers the crankshaft bearings. The clutch plates themselves heat up in seconds, hot enough to glaze the friction material, turning it glassy and slick. Once that happens, the plates start to slip even when you're riding normally, and those microscopic particles of burnt clutch material end up suspended in your engine oil. Mechanics call this clutch dust. It's gritty, abrasive, and it finds its way into every nook of your oil system, grinding away at bearings and cam surfaces over time. But it's not just hard launches. Riding the clutch, keeping it half engaged in slow traffic or feathering it at every stop, builds up heat inside the clutch basket. Wet clutches are designed to run cool, bathed in oil, but they can't handle marathon friction. When the oil gets hot and thin, its ability to protect moving parts drops fast. Add in the constant drag from a slipping clutch and you've got a recipe for premature wear, not just in the clutch, but throughout your transmission. Mechanics can spot a bike that's been ridden this way. Plates warped, oil dark and gritty, and sometimes even a blue tint on the steel plates from excess heat. Now about sitting in gear at stoplights. Every time you hold the clutch in, the throw-out bearing is spinning under load. It's a small part, not built for long stretches of pressure. Keep it loaded too long, and you'll hear the telltale whine or feel a vibration in the lever, the warning sign that failure is coming. Some bikes have bearings that fail as early as 16,000 miles when abused this way. When they go, you're looking at a teardown and a bill that stings. The fix? Simple. Launch with a smooth roll-on, letting out the clutch gradually instead of dumping it. In traffic, either fully engage or fully disengage the clutch. Don't hover in the friction zone. And at red lights, shift to neutral and let the clutch out. Your throw-out bearing, your oil, and your bank account will all thank you. Get in the habit now, and you'll keep your drivetrain running strong for years instead of months. 4. Never ignore overheating, especially on an air-cooled engine. Sitting at a red light, stuck in traffic, or just waiting with the engine running, the temperature starts rising fast. Unlike liquid-cooled bikes, air-cooled engines depend on moving air across those fins to shed heat. When the bike stands still, that cooling stops cold. Idle for just 3 to 5 minutes on a hot day, and cylinder head temperatures can rocket past 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Oil in the sump, usually safe around 220, creeps up toward 300. At 320, most motorcycle oils thin out so much they lose their protective film. The result? Metal-on-metal contact. Bearings start to starve. Piston rings and cylinder walls lose their buffer. Go a few minutes longer, and it gets worse. The oil starts to break down chemically, oxidizing, turning acidic, and leaving sludge behind. Meanwhile, vapor lock can creep in, especially if fuel lines run near the engine. That means the fuel literally boils in the line, starving the carburetor or injectors and leaving you stranded. But the real disaster comes if you keep pushing. Cylinder head temps near 375 spell trouble. Pistons expand faster than the cylinder can keep up. The clearance, measured in thousandths of an inch, vanishes. Suddenly, the piston grabs the cylinder wall. That's a seizure. In some cases, the piston even welds itself to the bore. Mechanics have pulled apart seized engines and found melted aluminum fused to the cylinder, deep scoring, and rings stuck solid in their grooves. One rider left his air-cooled V-twin idling while running an errand. 30 minutes later, he came back to a warning light and a knocking sound that didn't go away. A teardown showed warped heads and a cracked piston skirt. The bill? Several $1,000s. The warning signs are there for a reason. If the oil light flickers, if the temperature gauge climbs into the red, or if you smell burning oil, kill the engine immediately. Pull over, shut it down, and let it cool. Don't trust luck or hope the problem will go away. A split-second decision, pulling over instead of pushing on, can save you from a seized engine or a 5-figure repair. If you're stuck in traffic, shut the bike off or lane filter if it's legal. For air-cooled bikes, never let them idle more than a few minutes without airflow. Oil coolers and idle management systems help, but nothing beats moving air. Respect the warnings, and your engine will live to see another summer. Ignore them, and you might not make it home. Research confirms that up to 90% of motorcycle engine wear happens in the first 60 seconds after a cold start, long before most riders expect any harm. Throughout this documentary, we've shown how everyday habits like revving cold, lugging the engine, riding the clutch, and letting bikes overheat quietly inflict damage that leads to costly repairs or total engine failure. Mechanics reports and manufacturer bulletins repeatedly link these behaviors to sludge buildup, piston seizures, and premature clutch wear. Yet questions remain. Many riders still underestimate the risk of short trips, and long-term data on modern engine materials is limited. The evidence is clear. Simple changes such as warming up gently, avoiding high loads at low RPM, and respecting warning lights can extend engine life by tens of thousands of miles. The difference between an engine dying at 10,000 miles or lasting beyond 100,000 often comes down to daily choices. The facts speak for themselves. The habits you practice today determine your motorcycle's future.